Good day everyone, especially to our professor, Prince Simimba. My name is Andre Caballero, a fourth-year student with the course of BS Forestry, major in agroforestry. So today, I'm gonna share to you this topic that I've chosen, which is the cassava production. So this is the cassava production in the picture, also known as other names such as kasada or yuca. In Bisaya is kamanting. The root is the main food of the plant that is used as a food source and is a dark brown on the outside and white or yellowish on the outside. About 500 million people around the world depend cassava as a staple food. It is the third largest source of carbohydrates in plants used for food in the world. Cassava is one of the most cultivated and consumed food crops in many parts of the world, which is the scientific name is Manihot esculenta. Growing to around 1 to 4 meters in height, is cultivated for its tubers and leaves. The tubers are rich in starch. The stems are used as planting material, eaten both by humans and animals. Cassava is widely used in the food industry, such as pastries, tapioca, food pasta, and chips, with other 20 derivative products. Cassava is also used in the textile industry and in the production of paper, gloves, alcohol, or starch. So these are the parts of the cassava plants. We have the stem with flowers, tuber, female flower, stipules of leaves, cross-section of the male flower, cross-section of the female flower, young stem with leaves. And in the economic importance, the labor and the production cost required, such as the purchasing of fertilizers, plant protection products, and reproduction material, are minimal. These high-value crops considerable advantages in terms of food security with stable and high yields, even on marginal soils and in conditions with uncertain rainfall. Generally processed into food items such as dried chips and native pastries like suman, bibingka, and sago. Starch from processed cassava is used in biscuit making or as sweetening agent in confectioneries. Cassava is used mainly as food, feeds, or fuel. In site selection, cassava is an undemanding plant that is happy in a wide range of soils. Sites favorable of growing cassava have the following characteristics. First, dense vegetation with lots of dead leaves which increase soil fertility as they decompose. And the second, a light, deep soil of good texture. Sandy and clay soils are less suitable for growing cassava. Take a small sample of the soil, wet it and shape it into a ball. If the wet earth cannot be shaped into a ball, the soil is characterized as sandy. If the ball crumbles under pressure from the fingers, this is a light soil. If the ball does not crumble under pressure from the fingers, it is a clay soil. And the third one, a flat or slightly sloped site to prevent erosion that may destroy the humus-rich type soil. In the site preparation, this varies depending on the climate, soil type, vegetation, and terrain. The soil surface should be loosened, enriched in organic matter, and the growth of weeds should be reduced. For manual cultivation, clear the land, dig the soil. For heavy soils, carry out any mounding on or ridging. For heavy soils, carry out mechanized cultivation, gyro mulching, fludging, and ridging. In the selection of cuttings, the best varieties of cassava to plant are those that are rich in dry matter, which can be stored in the ground and are well adapted to the production area. These are the varieties with early tuberization in which are easy to process. Cassava cuttings are usually collected in the field during harvesting. Improved varieties may also to obtain from research or appropriate development organization. Collect the cutting of 20 to 30 centimeters long from the central portions of the brown, healthy stems at around 12 months old. Avoid any significantly hardened or tender stems. Healthy crops can be identified by their strong stems and branches, lush foliage, stems and leaves showing little damage from diseases or pests. To ensure uniform growth, harvest the stems about a week before setting and store them in the shade in a well-ventilated area. The cuttings should be taken at the time of planting or the day before. Each cutting should have 5 to 7 dormant buds. In method for planting cassava cuttings, cuttings are planted horizontally, diagonally, or vertically, with 1 or 2 cuttings per placement. The best method is to push them in sideways up to 3/4 of their length, with the nodes pointing upwards. Positioning the nodes upside down reduces the yield. Planting sideways favors the consolidation of the roots into one area and results in a grouping of tubers. In maintenance of the crop, maintenance comprises are replacing missing plants are required and removing the fragile shoots at the end of the 3rd month and only keeping the most vigorous shoots. In combating weeds by hoeing 2 or 3 times. First hoeing is 3 to 4 weeks after planting, and the second hoeing 1 to 2 months after first hoeing, and the third hoeing at the start of the second year. Make a 10 cm ridge to 5 or 6 weeks after planting for flat seeding. In fertilization, with new or long-term fallow land under intensive or continuous cultivation, fertilization compensates for the plant's absorption of mineral elements. For the production of cuttings, mineral fertilizer is preferred. When preparing the soil, add dolomite lime at a ratio of 100 kg per hectare. 2 months after planting, add nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium fertilizer at a rate of 300 kg per hectare to produce at least 25 tons per hectare of urea or 150 kg per hectare. Calcium phosphate 100 kg per hectare and potassium, calcium, and iron 250 kg per hectare with a production target of at least 30 tons per hectare. Organic fertilizer is recommended for the production of tubers. When preparing the soil for planting, add chicken litter or any other animal manure at a rate of 10 tons per hectare or 15 or 20 tons per hectare if the soil is depleted. In cassava harvesting, the harvest involves cutting stems at height of 25 to 34 centimeters from the ground using a machete in removing the tubers. And also, the dry season is the best time to harvest cassava because the tubers are rich in starch at the time. Drying is easy and the products can be easily processed and preserved. Cassava may be planted alone or in combination with other crops such as maize, plantain, vegetables, or legumes. The cultivation of cassava does not require much labor. I think 75 to 125 man days per hectare. From the preparation of the land to harvesting, sweet cassava tubers may be harvested 8 to 10 months after planting, whereas for the bitter varieties, the harvest starts the 12 months because of its resistance to high temperature, drought, and increased concentrations of atmospheric carbon dioxide. But cassava is very much adapted to climate change. The early varieties may mature at between 6 and 8 months on average after planting, whereas the late varieties require 12 and 19 months under optimal conditions, such as varieties should be harvested to 20 to 24 months after planting. Cassava grows after in humid lowlands than in high latitude areas. The yield varies from 20 to 30 tons per hectare for local varieties and from 25 to 70 tons per hectare for improved varieties in hostile environments where other crops fail. Cassava can provide good yields. In typical conditions, the yield may vary between 8 to 15 tons of tubers per hectare. And I mentioned a while ago because of its resistance to high temperature, drought and increased concentrations of atmospheric carbon dioxide, because cassava is very much adapted to climate change. So that's why. In storing cassava, 2 or 3 days after harvesting, there is a rapid rotting of the tubers. The harvest usually takes place according to use, including a short storage time in the open air. Several methods makes it possible to prolong storage by a few days. These are storage in silo pits covered with a thatched roof, storage in moist sawdust, immersion in a thiabindazole-based fungicide, and placing in polyethylene bags, cold storage and freezing, storage in plastic sheeting with the roots soaked in water. So these are the products of cassava, which are the cassava chips, tapioca, homemade glue, cassava cake, and cassava flour, and cassava pasta, and many more. And economic benefits, so a major source of cash income for producing households, contributing positively to poverty alleviation, because cassava is important not just as a food crop but even so as a major source of cash income for producing household. As a cash crop, cassava generates cash income for the largest number of households in comparison with other staples, contributing positively to poverty alleviation. So, in conclusion, cassava is a nutty flavored starchy root vegetables or tuber. It's a major source of calories and carbs for people in many countries, such as Nigeria, Thailand, and Indonesia are the top producing countries in the world. It's grown in tropical regions around the world because of its ability to withstand difficult growing conditions. In fact, it's one of the most drought-tolerant crops. The most commonly consumed part of the cassava plant is the root, which is incredibly versatile. You can eat it whole, grated, or ground into flour to use it in bread and crackers. Individuals with food allergies can benefit from using cassava root in cooking and baking because it's free gluten, grains, and nuts. But it's important to note is that you must cook cassava root before eating it, as it can be poisonous if consumed raw.